See the top of your head. Oh, you're
Is that
driving.
better?
Yeah.
No, I'm just sitting in my car because I'm at work.
Oh, and
Yeah, man.
apparently, we have to learn the technology. Apparently, the first person to get in has to let the other person in. So the
How?
first person
I
gets.
didn't touch it. I didn't touch anything.
I don't know.
It just
I don't
it just
know.
says
I
I
don't know
was
how.
backstage.
Yeah, it was backstage too. So we both got in. Well, that's great.
Weird.
How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Just working, staying busy. You know me.
Yeah,
I don't normally have
we're
this much fun on a Monday, so
well. The idea that's one of the things we were talking about at the beginning. The idea is to start doing this every week. I'm going to check. I keep getting pinged, so I'm going to make sure that's Andrea saying, "Oh, she put us in there." Okay, so we're live now. And okay, no one's in the chat room yet. People knew about this night, but I told them it was going to be, even though we're going to talk some baseball, it was going to be a little bit more, be prepared for mess ups, that kind of thing. I got to try to center myself here. There we go. But that's horrible. How about like that? A little bit back. So, that's the plan. You and I this year, we're going to get together. We're going to do a lot of the standard stuff, right? We're going to do
I'm
some
in.
positional breakdowns. We're going to do. I really want to do positional breakdowns because Kevin Hastings, the other friend of ours, he won the freaking TGFBI, and he spent so much time on those breakdowns. I can't imagine it didn't help him personally. So I will do it, and I will speak stuff to the world, to the ether, but I'm doing it for myself. So I know the stuff. You know what I mean? We think we
Understood.
know it, but do we know it that well? And
Trust me,
so,
I've already been digging in, trying to get me a healthy slice of statistical, knowledge that I can break down myself and try
well,
and
I
prepare.
mean,
Everyone's trying to do the same thing, so
I think that what we'll do is we'll break it up into like first base, third base, second base, shortstop, uh, outfield one day, starting pitcher one day, relief pitcher and catcher at the very end because the longer you wait on relief pitchers, the more we'll know.
I got to tell you, man. Like after last year's debacle with closers, I'm literally almost on the no closer bus at this point. I just don't. If we looked back and look at the amount of closers that were drafted over the last couple of years, and you look at the end of the year versus where what their ADP was versus if they were actually even closing anymore or on the same team, the numbers have got to be insane. It's gotten out of hand, especially the
Well,
last two or three
last
years.
year wasn't a real year the way they used closers.
I
I mean,
know.
the leading save getter had like 16 saves as Brad Hand. There are a lot of teams that had 5 people with 4 or more saves. It's just that's something that's why I'm going to put it to the very end. So like we'll do the other stuff first. Did you hear the news that happened today? There were a couple things while we were.
No, tell me. I'm into knowing what happened. I've been so busy all day long.
All right, I'm going to give you the minor news first. I'll give you the John Lester signed with the Nationals, one
I
year
did
terms
see that.
undisclosed.
I love what the Nationals have done this offseason, to be honest with you. They've made a couple small, I mean, they won't call them under the radar moves, but they're not like big name splashes going out getting Josh Bell from Pittsburgh. I love that. Signing Lester, he's a veteran presence in that rotation. You just throw him in he's your fifth starter, probably, maybe fourth. I don't see him cracking any, I don't see him getting any higher than what Corbin, Scherzer, and fucking Strasburg. So
I mean,
I like the move.
I went through today and I listed out all the moves every team did, and if there's time, we're going to get to that. That's kind of the meat of tonight's show. Is the idea would be if we recap everything, then we'll be fresh to go next week, and we can start with preparing for this week. But there was that. But the Nationals were one of the few teams that actually made significant moves. Most teams didn't. But one team that did, and this is probably the big news of the offseason, is the San Diego Padres. Did you hear about them? They traded they did a 3-way deal with the Pirates to acquire Joe Musgrove to be their fourth starter.
I heard about that. I didn't see the details as to exactly what
The
happened, but I saw it.
The
Pretty awesome.
Padres get Musgrove. The Mets get Joey Lucchesi, and
Okay.
the Mets give up Andy Rodriguez. The Pirates get Andy Rodriguez, Hudson Head, Drake Fellows, Omar Cruz, and David Bednar. Now, admittedly, this only came over about an hour ago, so I didn't go into any real detail into who those guys are. But these aren't the tip of the tongue prospects. Hudson Head is. I know he is. You know.
Padres, man, they're gonna be a juggernaut, dude. They're gonna put some serious contention into the Dodgers this year. I know the Dodgers are coming off of a World Series, etc. But
You know,
San Diego they just scream
no,
fun to me, dude. I don't know. That's
no,
just my opinion.
they'll
I'm
be
gonna draft
fun.
as many of them as I can.
I'm probably not going to draft a lot of Padres. I think that they're going to be. I mean, I think that most everybody is going to be rated higher than I would pay for them. I mean, I think I'm equal to the world where in my love of Fernando Tatis, but all the other guys, like I like Trent Grisham, but not as much as everybody else. You know,
yeah, people are high on Grisham.
You know, I was talking about Austin Nolan last year. I like him. I don't like him as much as other people are doing it. You know, I'm a pretty decent fan of Korean, players that come over, but with the depth at shortstop, I can't see Hak Seung Kim is even being draftable. You know, because there's just too many shortstops. You know, he's at best on your team a middle infielder. More appropriately, he's a bench player that you're hoping you get more than you expect from. And then you throw that in with it.
The fact watching those Korean. Go ahead.
Well, the fact that there's gonna be competition for second base between him and Jake Cronenworth sort of diminishes both those players.
No, I watched those Korean League guys a lot last year when there was nothing going on in the height of COVID, when everything was shut down, and ESPN was broadcasting those games. As you know, I work a lot of night shifts, and I'm on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So those games would come on at 3 a.m. my time. No, 1 in the morning my time. I take that back. So I watched probably the first 20 games until MLB kind of came back a little bit. But it was pretty interesting. And those guys can hit, man. Let me tell you what, that Korean baseball is not a soft league.
I've been a fan of like Asian baseball in a while, and the general takeaway I take is that they're better at the skills of baseball than Americans are, because you have to be a phenomenal talent you have to be a phenomenal talent for you to play on a team where the team doesn't make you play a certain way. And there's not that many of those guys. So everybody has to take pitches. Everybody has to be able to bunt. Everyone has to be able to run. It reminds me of my high school that I played baseball for, where they wanted everyone to be cookie cutter, the same sort of guy. And I wasn't that guy. I was a 6'3" power hitting catcher, which isn't the thing you see a lot of, who struck out a lot and was the slowest guy on the team. So you need to be faster. But I always respect the quality of the play that the Koreans give and the Japanese give. And I don't know. I mean, like, you look at that, it's like the San Diego Padres are a pretty good team all in all, except for they have like 8 good players, and then they have Eric Hosmer. And then
you don't like Eric Hosmer?
He's just completely vanilla. He's nothing special. He's a perfectly fine Major League Baseball player. I think of I'm a little older than you, right?
Sure.
About 8 years. And when I was growing up in baseball, there were these sort of like good first basemen who weren't great, and there was like a big argument between who's a better first baseman, Keith Hernandez or Mark Grace, right? They're both good first basemen who weren't great. Hosmer is not even that good. You know what I mean? He's a 260 hitter who hits a lot of ground balls. On a good year, he'll hit 22 home runs. I think they would have been a better team with Mitch Moreland as their first baseman. That's my opinion. But he does the job well. He's one of those guys that it's cliche where he's a better baseball player than he is a fantasy baseball player. I understand why people like him. The way
I'm not mad at Hosmer at all. And considering the amount of bats they're putting around him, he's had some of his better years in San Diego. I mean, didn't he have basically his first 100 RBI season? More or less being in San Diego.
But as everyone will say, that's a product of the things that are around you. But him personally, it wasn't like he was that great. When I was on New Year's Eve with Andy, we were talking about this guy, and we noticed that he was in the NFBC being drafted around pick 140, 130, and that's absolutely no value. That's about what you're going to expect from him. The one thing that I would say with Hosmer is, what you're going to get from him. It's going to be like a 270 batting average with 20 home runs and a decent RBI total, and it's really not going to be much worse than that. It's like he has if I say he's going to hit 20 home runs, it's like Well, he might on a great year hit 22, and on a bad year he'll hit 17. Like it's really close to that number. You know what I mean? When I say 270 batting hitter, on a great year he'll hit 278, and on a bad year he'll hit 265.
He's a floor player to me. He's going to get you a certain floor.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I'm saying.
Serviceable.
He's serviceable.
I would take it. I would take him in any deeper.
All right, we're digressing. It's first night we can do this. The thing about first base to me this year is that when I looked at it, this is it, right? You got the two guys at the top, plus the 2.5 guys at the top. You have Cody Bellinger, Freddie Freeman. I like Freeman more than Bellinger. Then you have DJ LeMahieu, which you may or may not play at first base. And those are like that. That's 1, 2, and 3. Then you have like the old standbys. The standbys are Abreu, Goldschmidt, Rizzo. Then you have these two young guys that have hit a lot of power, but it's a little bit of a risk with Pete Alonso and Luke Voigt. Right? Then once you're beyond that, then you're asking some questions. Now at that point, that's where Hosmer would fit in. He'd be the next first baseman picked, or maybe 2 away or something. I'm probably forgetting somebody.
He's in the same group with me, like Carlos Santana. I'm going to take Josh Bell above these guys for sure.
That's what I'm saying. And that for me personally, I look at that and I go, the one thing like when you go to a draft, you're not going to get everybody you want, and you're going to make sacrifices somewhere. You're going to say like I can live with decent pitcher 3, 4, 5 because I think I can work it on the thing. Or you can say I'm not going to draft a relief pitcher because I'll work the wire to get it. And then what you're doing is you're going to discount the money that you're spending on those positions in an auction, or you're going to draft later on these guys, or if at all. To me, I think that first base is one of those positions because once you get past Freeman, Bellinger, LeMahieu, none of these guys are exciting. Goldschmidt's a shell of what he once was. Abreu and Rizzo are solid, and Goldschmidt belongs right with those guys, but there's nothing spectacular about them. And then you get all these other players. And then you look way at the back of the draft. And at the back of the first base draft, there's a lot of guys that aren't going to be drafted that I think are going to be pretty decent, like Joey Votto, right? And not that I want Votto, but there's 5 guys that are functionally rookies that are going to play first base this year who I would rather draft than Eric Hosmer. And if they don't work out, then I'd settle for a Joey Votto or a Brandon Belt. And those guys it's amazing how many young guys are going to get to play first base. You got Ryan Mountcastle in Baltimore. Andrew Vaughn is going to play DH in Chicago. He's a first baseman. Bobby Dahlbeck in Boston. Jared Walsh in Los Angeles. And I'm missing one more. Oh, Josh Fuentes in Colorado. And like any one of those guys, either because of talent, I mean, Walsh has significant power. Dahlbeck has significant power. Andrew Vaughn was the number 1 overall pick. Mountcastle last year in limited time hit 325. Looks like a decent all-around player. Josh Fuentes is a wild card, but he's playing in Colorado, and Colorado has made stars out of lesser men than him. Take one of those guys, literally pick 20 in your draft. And if it doesn't work out, then you fall back to Votto or you fall back to Belt, and you're okay. And then this gives you the room to draft a second shortstop quicker, because I think that shortstop has a lot of great shortstops. I said that already. It's like I find myself in most mock drafts drafting a shortstop in the first round and then winding up drafting another shortstop in the 5th, 6th, or 7th round, because guys like Lindor and Seager fall to that level.
First base is just an odd position to me, especially when you consider the fact that both of the MVPs came from first base. And I can remember, and let's just go back to the years when like Pujols and Ryan Howard were around and Justin Morneau, and you had so much talent at first base that it seemed like to be one of the deepest positions in the draft.
That used to be the strategy in fantasy was like, you got to get that really good first baseman. The world's changed. You got to get that shortstop now. That's the thing.
It's interesting when you look at first base, but I just find the juxtaposition odd. When you say, okay, well, both of our MVPs came from first base, but I don't look at first base as that imposing position where both of our MVPs normally come from. They're not carrying a ton of weight in fantasy drafts. I don't see guys going out of the way to draft Freddie Freeman, top 5. It's just very interesting that first base is a real, it's a dilemma on what to do with it almost, because sometimes I don't know what to do with it anymore. Because sometimes it almost becomes an afterthought for me in drafts. I don't know if you feel the same way anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, outside of basically what happens is like, I think if I wind up in a draft and I have like the 14th pick in a 15 round draft, or let's say I have the 11th pick in a 12 person draft, I would target Freeman at 14 or at 17, depending where it is, like the second pick in the first round on a shorter roster, on a smaller league. But if it didn't make it to me, then I would go, I don't really want any of these guys because the price is too high. And then I would do that thing and I would pick other spots because I don't know what you want, but I want guys that trigger all 5 categories on my hitting side. I also have a problem with the pitching in that there's very few pitchers I trust, so I'm probably going to target pitchers higher than I had in the past because I'd like to get 2 pitchers I trust and have, when I pick 7 pitchers, have 5 pitchers that I don't really trust. Whereas I usually go into the season with 1's fine because everybody is consequently up and down, bad and not good. Like good 1 year, bad 1 year. Generally, they're bad when I have them.
Inconsistency.
Yeah, I believe I've had Justin Verlander in every one of his bad years, which are 2. He's had 2 bad years.
Yeah, I was all in on him last year. Unfortunately, I was getting good values on him. Trying to snag him.
That's part of it too. Is that when I say there's 2 pitchers that I trust, I trust Cole and I trust DeGrom, and if Sale and Verlander were healthy, it'd be 4. And then there's these. You're
saying, do you don't trust Yu Darvish? Because I trust Darvish from what I've seen from. I like Tommy John surgery.
I like Darvish a lot. In every draft that I've played that is real, and every draft that I play that's mocked, he has gone no later than like the 3rd pick in the 3rd round. And at that level,
I'll take him there all fucking day.
At that level, at 3rd, yeah, but he's gone no later than that. He's been going in the 2nd round, like in the middle of the 2nd. I'm like, it's like at that point, there's like a 4% chance that he's going to outperform that draft position.
I don't even know that he's going to outperform the draft position, but I feel like he's going to give you value for the draft position unless a freak injury happens. And I don't see that. I feel
he has to at least. I mean, I think to be the 21st pick in the draft, you have to perform very well. And the truth is that many pitchers will wind up in the top 25 at the end of the year. It just seems like there's a little bit of a scattering of what they are. And it's like, whatever it is with Darvish, it's like Darvish could have a pretty good year and not be the 21st best player. He could have if he wound up winning 15 games with 200 strikeouts and a 3.55 ERA, which is a little high, he'd be like the 48th best player, which would mean that you're still losing at that point. It's like I don't really like Shane Bieber for him. Like Shane Bieber has to basically do what he does last year to make it to his point. But I'm digressing on the pitching thing. It's like those guys in the middle sort of scare me, and I'd rather just cycle through a bunch of guys at the end. And I think there's a lot of pitchers at the end that are better than you might think.
Interesting. Yeah, I got to get into it. I think this year is going to be so interesting. Like I said, I think this is why we're going to have a lot of listeners this year, because more than any other year we've ever done fantasy baseball in my 20 plus years of doing fantasy baseball, I can't remember this many just general question marks up in the air about how we're handling things going forward.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to find where would my notes be? I don't know.
Like, for example, if I told you who if Kenta Maeda was a top 6 pitcher last year, would you believe me?
Yeah, I believe you, but it was a 60-game season. And the knock on Maeda is that he fades down the stretch, so he didn't have a stretch last year. I think if you draft him as a top 6 pitcher, I hope I'm in your league.
I don't think I'm saying to draft him as a top 6 pitcher, but I'm saying I feel like no one's taking Maeda super high this year.
His fades,
where you are going to get him.
His fades have been not so bad of late because the Dodgers just wouldn't pitch him. What was the last time that he actually finished the year of the Dodgers as a starter? Like, hey, you're fading. We're going to put you in the bullpen. And as a bullpen, you say, hey, pitch 1 good inning. He was very good. But I think Maeda is going to be overdrafted. I won't grab any of them, especially people that judge it on last year. And there's a lot of weird things that happened last year. I'm sitting here looking at Andrea. I was looking at Andrea's favorite person, right? Trevor Bauer.
Yeah.
and he didn't get a qualifying offer. You know why that is?
Last year.
This year.
Really?
Did he? Oh no, they did. Okay, no.
I was gonna say he had to have. He won the fucking Cy Young. There's no way they don't restrict him.
Yeah, they don't get much for it, but Cy Young or Wednesday qualifying offer tied to a draft 18,000. I was thinking as good as he is, 18 million should be easy to pay, but I don't think anyone's going to pay him. I'm going to bet you money that he gets less money than 18.9 before the year's out.
I don't know about that. He's going to get paid.
You know, unless he breaks on that 1 year thing, because the truth is they have that StatCast thing which they call MLB Analytics, right? And every team gets that. And in that package, it says that based on what he's doing in his career, he's worth X amount of money. And everybody's going to bid about that amount of money. Now, apparently, he got the qualifying offer, which I didn't see. So he's probably worth about 18 or 20 million, but he wants more than that, or he's limiting himself because he wants a 1 year contract to the 6 or 8 teams that could actually are looking at win now. I don't know. I got digressed on him, but it's like, but he's a guy that I'm not going to draft. I think that he could very easily. I mean, the strikeouts are going to be there, but the question is whether he wins games and whether his ERA is good or average. You know, and there's enough of that question that at the point where he's being drafted, it's too much risk. At that point where you could draft, literally you could draft Freddie Freeman in a lot of cases. You could draft Yu Darvish. I don't know. You like Yu Darvish better than him?
And Bauer, I would take Darvish over Bauer, to be honest with you. I trust in Darvish from what I've seen over the course of his career. And when he's healthy, he's almost unhittable, man. His slider is disgusting. And I believe, he was over a year removed from Tommy John surgery last year, and I think it was on full display. And go into a more pitcher-friendly park in San Diego with, in reality, not as tough a division. I guess the NL Central's gotten a little weaker this offseason, but I don't feel like outside of the Dodgers is really, really that tough. You got Colorado's not really that great. Arizona's not really that great. I mean,
I think the Central is outside of the Pirates. It's 4 decent teams, and they'll beat each other up pretty well. You're not going to find somebody with 104 wins there, but in the West, it's going to be the Padres and the Dodgers, and literally, I think that the other teams are going to be downright bad. I think for the last 10 years, I always had hope for the Colorado Rockies. I don't really have it this year.
No, but look at the NL Central in general. Like what I was saying, almost every team has taken a step back and gotten back. I think the only team that hasn't is Milwaukee, and they're going to get a little bit better next year.
Well, the truth is nobody in that division has signed anybody really that matters. Well, so the Milwaukee by getting Lorenzo Cain back.
I was just going to say that they're getting Lorenzo Cain back, so it's adding a player. But
that's the best add of a player you're going to see in the Central, though. There's still a month and a half to go, and
everyone else took away though. Think about it like this. Yadi Molina's not coming back in St. Louis.
Well, do we know that
the Cubs are getting rid of players? There's rumors that Chris Bryant's going to be gone soon.
I mean,
the Reds are losing all these players. I mean,
well, the only player the Reds have lost is Bauer, right? I mean,
yeah, and there's word they're shopping Sonny Gray as well, but that's only been rumblings.
But that is the question to me. Like last year, Cincinnati Reds were the Padres of 2020. We're in 2021 now, right? Yeah, they were the guys that were making the moves, and they picked up Bauer just the year before, and they got Moustakas and they got Castellanos, and everyone thought they were going to be good. But the one thing that was nice about them is they were spending money, and then this year they just decided not to. Like it was a one-shot deal. I mean, I remember the Marlins did it that 1 year where they signed like Jose Reyes and Hanley Ramirez off in the offseason, and then when they lost 11 of their first 19 games, they decided, this season's over, and then they just got rid of them. But at least the Reds played 60 games. But I think that they should try to do more. But there's a lot of players out there, and it seems like the National League Central, nobody there thinks they can win the World Series, so they think they're only thinking about winning the division. And right now, you could make an argument for every team in that division winning that division except for the Pirates.
I really think that you're going to see Milwaukee come in and be the juggernaut of that division, unless St. Louis makes a signing and signs another. They desperately need another bat. I don't feel like Goldschmidt's any longer the answer in that lineup.
I mean, like,
They,
he's going to hit 260. He's going to drive in nearly 100 runs, if not more. You know,
he's decent.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that middle rung first baseman thing doesn't excite me.
They need to go trade for an Arenado. They never should have let Marcelo Ozuna walk. To be honestly, I'm going to be very interested to see where that guy signs.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that
pieces of all this offseason.
There are a lot of players left to still be signed, and
yes.
I mean Marcelo Ozuna is probably among the best. I guess I can look up all the free agents, but the truth is there is the teams we're looking at right this moment.
I'd say Springer, JT Realmuto, and Ozuna are probably the top 3 free agents.
Springer's up there for sure.
Nelson Cruz, you could put him in that grouping as well.
We throw there too.
And Bauer, exactly. Yes.
But any one of those 5 guys, maybe with Ozuna being the in the wrong spot, Ozuna, because he's not a good fielder, and if he doesn't play DH, in the wrong.
They need to put him. He needs to sign. You know what, dude? I'm freaking so weird. I was such an anti-DH guy going into last year, but now after seeing what it did for some of the older players in the National League, I really like it. Kind of embraced it almost. It was able to extend so many guys' careers, and you were able to see so much more flexibility in certain guys' careers. Now you're not forced to go to an American League team.
That was sort of the thing that I always thought about. It's like the American League can play with that rule. I don't particularly like it because, I think that baseball, you should play the entire thing. It's like the reason why players don't know how to bunt if pitchers can't hit is because we stopped teaching them. It wasn't because they didn't do it. And the truth is, it didn't take weeks and months to teach that stuff. It took like one day in spring training. Now, admittedly, among COVID, you may not have that day, but because short, whatever. But I didn't think it added anything to it. I thought to myself, like if you looked at the batting average among the DHs in the National League, it was better than pitchers, but by about 40 points. But still, it was only like 250, 240. It was really, really quite poor. And it's like, did it really add anything to it? I don't know. Did it take anything away? No. I mean, it's one of those things where, other than being able to have that sort of point in the break where there is this. I mean, the strategy of having a pitcher there is, if you get past this batter, you'll have an easier out. Those kind of things that you're doing. I can walk this player. The strategy part is gone, but I don't think that the DH actually helped. I mean, it helped the Mets. I guess it helped the Braves because they had Ozuna.
I think it could help a team like the Giants this year with a Buster Posey getting a little bit older.
Yeah, the thing about it, the reason why I don't think it would help the Giants is because if you have the DH and Buster Posey's your DH, then 12 teams in the National League have better DHs than you. It's like you have to have a really good player to fill that role. And don't get me wrong, I love Buster Posey as a baseball player, but in your wildest dreams, what do you really expect from him? Like a 318 average, 15 home runs, and 70 RBIs?
Yeah, that's if he goes out of his mind.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's not Marcell Ozuna. That's not even Dominic Smith of the Mets. You would want somebody else to play that position. And so actually it would behoove the Giants to probably not have the DH. Whereas, I've said this before, I'm a Cub fan. In the 2016 World Series, if we didn't have the DH 4 games, we probably don't win that because we were the team that had the guy. We literally had we probably had the most shares.
Yeah, dude.
It's not that he can't field, but he literally was not medically allowed to field. You know what I mean?
Remember.
Like, so you can DH these 4 games and you can hit 375. And the only game they won they only won 1 game without him on the team. They won 3 on the road and 1 at home.
I honestly love him in the Nationals lineup, dude. We can talk about it all day. I love what the Nationals are doing.
I was thinking who's playing the right field for them. I was thinking about a couple of things. Like I was looking at the Mets because they signed Lindor, and I was looking at Lindor is one of the best fielding shortstops in the history of the world. And then at third base, they're going to have J.D. Davis, and at shortstop, they're going to have Jeff McNeil, which are 2 of the worst fielding second base and third base. Like, well, Lindor could probably cover all the way to first base. It'll be okay. And I was thinking the same thing. I had the same thought about Robles. I'm like, well, Schwarber. I think people really knock Schwarber too much on his fielding. Now he's a negative defensive WAR left fielder, but there really aren't many. I don't think there's more than 2 or 3 positive WAR left fielders in the game. And so when he's like a -4 WAR, he's actually above league average for left fielders. Now, overall gets moved up a bit because most teams who have a bad fielding left fielder will have a backup like Alberto Almora or Ian Happ that will come in when it's really important to have good fielding. But I was thinking that outfield wasn't really that good. Oh, it's Soto. It's Juan Soto. Why am I thinking?
I was going to say, I'm looking at it right now. Soto's
okay.
going to be in right, Robles in left, and you're probably going to see a rotation in left field between Josh Harrison, Schwarber, and Andrew Stevenson.
But like I said, I think people knock Schwarber on that stuff. And the truth is, on the other side of the thing, he makes every play look more difficult than it is, which is why people think he's a bad fielder. But he does make those plays. He's always among the leaders in putouts for outfielders because he's got a hell of an arm, And I think that if you really look at all the fielding stats on left fielders, that's where you put bad fielders. And so, even though he's worse than a good backup, his bat makes up for it, and the truth is he's better than 20 teams at that position with their starters. So that's my feeling on Schwarber. And then John Lester joins him over there, and I can't not like Schwarber. I mean, it's like I know that a lot of Cub fans are really pissed at Theo Epstein for letting it go south. I don't think it was Epstein. I think it was the Ricketts because they bought the team as an investment, not to make the team good. And part of the investment deal is if you win a World Series, then you won't have to put any more money into it for 20 years.
Sure.
But that's part of what they were sold on. But it's like.
Well, and you've also heard a lot of whispers that Chris Bryant ended up in Nationals too. I've heard a lot of rumblings that there's possibility that there could be a Carter Kieboom swap in the works.
They would like to trade Bryant, but in every trade right now, like they're saying, like I'm a Cub fan. I know their lineup. The lineup right now is Bryant at third, Baez at short, Bodie at second, Rizzo at first, Wilson Contreras behind the plate. The outfield is Happ. Nico Renfroe and Jason Hayward. That's a good team. Now it's like that team could win that division. The thing that worries me a little bit is their pitching staff, but they won the World Series by strategically picking older pitchers that can do the job, but then they got old. John Lester might go down in history as one of the best free agent signings in the history of the world. He did what he was supposed to, and then in the last year of his contract, he wasn't any good, and that's what you expect, right?
Yes.
And like nobody can knock that. But what was I going to say? It's like I look at the Cubs and go, I spent my whole life going, if I could just get one. And now that I got one, I remember that I said if I could just get one, I'd be okay. I mean,
but that team was set up. You guys had such a great team. I don't understand.
It wasn't. They were a bunch of young
you
guys.
Had some good prospects, man.
A bunch of young guys that have a whole lot of swing and miss in them. So they were going to always be streaky, and they were tied together to win that thing by a couple of guys that could hit the ball. Anthony Rizzo's the one guy who can hit the ball regularly. But the strikeouts that Baez gives you and Contreras gives you and Bryant gives you and Schwarber gives you it's a very easy way. That first year when we made the NLCS and we faced the New York Mets pitching staff at probably its height of greatness, the Syndergaard, DeGrom, Harvey year, we struck out like 18 times a game in that thing. And that's who we were. The next year we had 2 guys that were good at on base. We had Ben Zobrist and we had Dexter Fowler. And that let us get through this stuff. But since we lost those guys, we just don't get people on base. Our best on base guy is probably Ian Happ now, and I would say that he's average. Yes. And that's the problem. That's the problem with a lot of teams is they don't have that. The DJ LeMahieu signing. Like I thought to myself, if the Yankees don't have DJ LeMahieu, they have a lot of problematic players that are prone to injuries and cold streaks. If they don't sign DJ LeMahieu, they're not really a contender for that division. It's going to be the Rays somehow. Or, it was the same thing as say, it's like the Cubs actually sort of won the World Series like 1 year sooner than they thought they were going to. the team that might be 1 year ahead is the Blue Jays, but they really need
I
pitching.
like that Blue Jays team.
I
I
mean,
tell you what, I would
the-
love to see. I would love to see a player like Nelson Cruz sign in freaking Toronto. Woo!
If you look
Man.
at the Blue Jays starting lineup, they have one player with over 3 years experience. That is a
That's
very
what I'm
young
saying.
team.
You put a veteran in the middle of that squad, someone that really knows how to win some ball games, man. They could be really dangerous, man. They got some good
Well, and
pitching. I think
Randall
we're gonna see.
Dykes.
I think we're going to see a slim down Vladdy Guerrero Jr. hopefully finally break out. I feel like he's the player that I always wanted to see break out the most, just because of his raw power, and I love his dad so much. And
No, I
I
think that they could do a little. They could, if especially, I mean, they re-signed Robbie Ray. If they could get him to have a decent year, and then theoretically make a move to sign somebody midway through, so that they have a little bit of a workhorse veteran pitcher, that team could be like the team that, like, we think they're going to compete in 2023, but they do it this year or next year, and that's what the Cubs did. The Cubs made it 1 year earlier, and they were never able to repeat again, because the truth is there's 30 teams and only one team gets to be the World Series winner, and that's a hard thing to accomplish. Most teams
I'll
don't
tell you
do
what,
it.
the AL East is going to be fun, man. If Tampa shows up, or not Tampa, Toronto really shows up and does some things. Tampa's already good. The Yankees are coming back. Hopefully, we'll see if they. I tell you what, that Yankees team stays healthy, man. They're going to be real dangerous. And I know there was a lot of whispers on Twitter this week about them possibly getting Luis Castillo from the Cubs. I mean, my timeline wouldn't shut up about it for about 2 days. Or for the Reds, I'm sorry.
Everybody.
Yeah, there was
the
a lot
thing
of
is about-
rumblings.
the
They
thing
were
about
going to
the
try and go
Yankees
get
is-
him.
The thing about the Yankees is they're always rumored for everybody. They
Sure.
signed Kluber. I mean, I really in every one of the drafts and mocks that I've done, I've drafted Kluber. I think the highest I ever drafted him was like pick 160, and he, just because he was the Yankees, he's still the same pitcher. Matter of fact, it's probably a worse situation for him. He's going to be picked.
Kluber's going to be very interesting this year.
He's going to be picked 4 rounds higher. At 160, he's a guaranteed value. He's going to outpitch that spot. At 120, I don't. He probably. I believe enough in him to think he will, but not by much.
It's so interesting. I mean, we're not that far removed from him being dominant, back-to-back 20-win, Cy Young contender. Like,
yeah, there is nothing that makes you say that he can't be the great pitcher he once was, other than he's a little bit older and he's coming back from an injury. And people get older and come back from injuries all the time and are perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's not like he has a ton of miles on his arm either. I don't feel like he's one of those guys where you look at him and go, you got 5,000 innings on your arm or whatever. Like Clayton Kershaw's got a ridiculous amount at his age compared to some of the other guys in baseball. Like I was watching someone compare the fact that Clayton Kershaw and Jacob deGrom are kind of similar in age, but Kershaw's got like 3 times the amount of innings in the majors that deGrom did. And deGrom being, because someone was trying to make the case for deGrom making the Hall of Fame. And to be honest with you, man, like if you look at it from a certain perspective, if he can pitch at a high level later in his career, later than most guys, kind of like a Max Scherzer has, because where Scherzer wasn't really, he was a late bloomer. He was thought to be a reliever out of college, etc. One of those cases like that.
Because it's just up the road. I always, whenever I hear those guys, Kluber and deGrom went to the same college up the road for me, and they weren't very good in college. They got better in the minors. Like, it was one of those things where they were drafted on raw talent, and they got better in the minors. And they went to Stetson University.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I love it when those later round guys develop and turn into like stud pitchers. I mean, deGrom, for example, was a freaking shortstop, and they converted him. I mean, it's amazing to see what, and he's won 2 Cy Youngs, and is arguably the top pitcher in baseball right now. You can make an argument for Garrett Cole at the top of the draft, but I'm more of a deGrom guy, to be honest with you.
I think deGrom is the guy you're going to get. You draft him and you go, I might only get 10 wins, but everything else is going to be really nice.
Not this year, though, man.
And if he gives me 13 or 14 wins, that's just icing on the cake. Like, there's really no downside to deGrom. That's why I would pick him. And it's like I would probably pick him over Cole for that reason. There's really no downside, because the downside that is that he doesn't get the wins, but that when you pick him up and you go, that's fine. Give me all those innings with the great whip and the great strikeouts and the great ERA, and I can live. And then
You
if
know,
it happens, like I thought it was interesting that there was that one year that DeGrom had he pitched like 11 games in a row without getting a win.
okay.
And the guy that pitched after him was Zach Wheeler, and he pitched in that same stretch. He pitched seven games in a row where he won all of them, even though he didn't pitch well in many of them. It's like that's the randomness of it. But I do feel that sometimes a lot of baseball is decided in the 1 foot of space between your ears, and I think that when you have a Jake DeGrom on the mound, sometimes the other guys, the batters, relax a little bit. We don't need to work as hard. It's like subconscious. It's not a overt choice to not press as hard, but they're like, yeah, we got this one. DeGrom's on the mound. I used to, one of the better pitchers, I wouldn't say his name, growing up in high school in Chicago, I used to catch him. He used to like me catching him because I let him choose his pitches. It's like, yeah, whatever works. If it doesn't work, I won't do it. And when he was on the mound, we didn't score a lot of runs. He won a lot, but people are just like, Pablito's on the mound, so we're cool. And I think there's a lot of that. And then when Zach Wheeler came on the next day, they're like, this guy stinks. We better score 6 runs. He just turned me off.
No, I was just smoking some weed. I didn't want to fucking cough in anyone's ear.
Yeah, that is what happens.
Yeah. So I didn't want to do that. So, but I was listening to everything you said.
No, we're I'm trying to think of his.
I was going to talk about something. Talk about something that I want to bring up. So
bring it up because the covering everything that happened would take an hour, and we probably shouldn't talk for more than 20 more minutes.
What if I told you, or I have a question for you. Who do you think was the number 1 position player statistically over the last month of the season, without looking it up?
I mean, I'm good at guessing these things. I haven't looked it up. You see, but I know that Trey Turner had had a monster close.
It's a good guess.
So that's the guy I would guess.
You'd be wrong if I told you it was Alberto Mondesi by a freaking mile and a half. Like, it's so weird because I love this kid, and I've drafted in the last couple of years. I love his stolen base potential upside. I love the power speed combination. Kind of reminds me of a young Alfonso Soriano and what I think I'm going to get from him. But he was literally droppable the first 2. There were 60 games played. I'd say that the first 30 games of the season he was completely droppable. He was horrible. I don't even think he hit over 200. He was so bad, and then something caught fire under his ass, and he went on the tear of tears.
If I'm not mistaken, he's been a closer every year that he's played. It's like you draft him, you get kind of a little fed up with him, and then at the end of the year you go, that wasn't a bad year. You know
exactly.
It's like he got me the stolen bases. The batting average was 240, a little lower than I'd want. Definitely, if I'm in an on-base league, it hurts. But everything else was where you expect it to be.
Yeah, he's a guy that I love. I've always loved. I'm gonna get him. He's a 3rd, 4th round guy. He's gonna be available in that area. Around pick 45, something like that. I'm gonna snag him in most drafts that I can.
I think he's gonna be available beyond that because I'm looking at that shortstop list and I'm, it's like you got in the first round alone, you have Tatis, Story, Turner, and who am I forgetting? Who am I forgetting? There's Lindor, Machado, Bregman. There's all these shortstops. I especially if you're in a 12-team league or whatever, or if you're in a 15-team league, he's going to be like the 13th.
Machado and Bichette.
Bichette?
Yeah. Mondesi's 7th, but then after him, you got Bregman and Bogarts, Corey Seager. You got some serious talent at the position this year. It just depends on how you want to go with that talent.
No, exactly that. So, I mean, if you look at all that stuff, it's like, I think you can wait a little bit on him. I have been advising
in the NFBC, he's the number 27 overall player taken. Number 7 shortstop. Yes.
Wow. No, that's too. The thing about it is this is one of the points I was trying to make on New Year's Eve. Is that when we decide who we're going to pick at what spot, we take into consider a lot of things, right? To me, I'm a little bit more of an old school. What my eyes tell me, what I've seen in the past than the other guys, but I do know I know the stats. I have a degree in economics. I've made it through differential equations. I understand the math part. And this year, the difference is in years past, you would say like the things that people look at is they would look at like advanced metrics and what they did last year, right? This year, they're going to look at advanced metrics, but they're also going to go back a year on advanced metrics because they don't know what to make in 2020. And they're going to look at last year's stats, but they're also going to go back a year on that. So the rationalization part on drafting a player is going to be so much easier this year. You give me a player, even a player I don't like, I'll tell you why you could draft him, because all I have to do is reach for one of those things. Like, well, in 2019, he had one of the best exit velocities, like that thing. It's like, well, we'll discount, like, Christian Yelich had a horrible 2020, but he has such a great 2019. We're still drafting him high. We're going to pick and choose what we're doing. And so when it comes to players like Alberto Mondesi or almost anybody, people are going to associate me with Tasker Hernandez. If you were to look at it, I think it's more important than ever to look at the high-low draft pick in those stats, because you're going to find players that their high pick is 27, but their low pick is 143, because players are going to be drafted high based on the one guy who really likes him. Whereas there's going to be 10 guys in that same league who don't like that player. But, you're going to have that. It's going to be a harder year to draft that reason, because it's going to be much harder to predict players than it has been in the past, because of that. People are going to everyone's going to agree that Jake DeGrom's good, right? Everyone's going to agree that Bryce Harper's good enough, right? But those guys, once you hear to get about pick 30, you're going to have wildly different thoughts. And all it takes is one guy in a 15-team league. It's like literally Albert Mondesi could be the 27th overall pick, because in all the leagues out there was 2 or 3 guys that really loved him, and they always picked him high.
Well, I'm telling you right now, I love him, and I'm picking him high.
I don't know how you could pick him over. I would pick him over Xander Bogaerts, because I really don't get the Bogaerts love, but I wouldn't pick him over Corey Seager.
I'd pick him over Seager. It's just a stolen base factor. It's a category where it's a scarcity product.
This is kind of that we talked earlier about how the first baseman used to be like the anchor of your team. And now I think it's the shortstop anchor team, and you really want a shortstop that gives you stolen bases too. That's why you want Tatis, Story, Turner, Lindor. But
in a perfect world, it'd be ideal to take Turner and Mondesi, take Turner in the first round, and take Mondesi in the third round.
When I was picking, 15 years ago, when I was picking Albert Pujols with the first pick, or Justin Morneau with the second pick, Miguel Cabrera with the first pick.
God, I love him.
What I would do is at the end of the draft, I would pick it for my middle infield, because middle infield was weak in those days. You remember, like guys like Dan Uggla were the best guys out there. I would pick guys that were solely for stolen bases, and it would work out fine. And sometimes they would be pretty good. The Rafael Furcalls of the world kind of guys. Nowadays, I think that the hitting in the middle infield is so good that when I'm targeting stolen bases, I'm not going to target shortstop for stolen bases. I'm going to target one outfield spot if I'm in a 3 outfielder league and 2 outfielder spots. If I'm in, I would think that like you're talking about picking Mondesi with the 27th pick overall. I would much rather, I can't imagine Lindor not being available around there, but maybe he's not. But I could draft near the end of the draft. There are these guys that are really good base stealers that are going to get playing time this year, like Tony Kemp in Oakland, and Roman Quinn is pegged to be the center fielder for Philadelphia. Leodis Tavares in Texas isn't going to get pulled out of center field. They let Delano DeShields play that thing and hit 212 for 2 years. Those are the guys that I would pick up, and I think that they can give enough in the other spots. That the guy that I'm picking at 27 is going to be a better all-around player outside of the stolen bases than Raul Mondesi. I understand the thinking, but I don't think it's that crazy.
But Mondesi's still young enough, and he's shown outliers in other categories to where I feel like stolen bases. I feel like and mind you, take this what I'm saying with a grain of salt, but I think he has the skill set to put up a Ricky Henderson-like season.
No, I think he has a skill set to not the stolen bases. I don't think he can put up 90, 100 stolen bases.
I
But
do. I think realistically, he could
I
steal
think
80
the
bases
realistic
in
thing
any
about him
given year.
is the realistic thing about him is that he could pop off for 25 or 20 home runs one year. Yeah, he could be he could push 30-30, which I think, and that's, I do see that in him. But the problem is when I'm picking him 27th, which is the second round in a 15-team draft, you almost need that from him. You know, you almost need that. Well, maybe not that, but you need him to hit. You probably need him to go, 15-25 to merit that. Probably better than that.
I made it a little hot. Hold on. Give me a second.
You're hot.
Keep talking.
Oh, I don't know what to talk about. Oh, Theo Epstein. Somebody asked me, emailed the question, "What do you think of Theo Epstein?" Because I'm a Cub fan, and I think that Theo Epstein taking the job with Major League Baseball as a consultant is him saying that he doesn't want to fight the fight of baseball anymore, and he's taking an emeritus position. He can just enjoy himself. I figured that Epstein would probably go. I thought he'd go into media, but he decided to go into the Major League office, because what does Joe Torre really do? Nothing. It's an emeritus position. You just, because you played well, you get paid and you still get to hang around the game. Because the truth is, where could Epstein go and not fail? If you base the fact like, well, you turned around the Red Sox and you turned around the Cubs.
You know where I could see him landing next?
No, I mean, let's say he went to the Yankees and got him the win. That actually wouldn't be as good as what he had done in the past. You know what I mean?
You know where
that
I
would
could
be
see Epstein
a
going up?
comparative failure for him.
No, I could see him teaming up with Derek Jeter out in fucking Miami and winning the World Series and doing the track. That's a team that was a dumpster fire as recently as last year.
I think right now, I think that if he were to play with another team, it would mean that he would have to charge less in the future for his public speaking engagements, because he would have a loss on his record. He would go somewhere and not get them to the World Series. Right now, he's perfect. You know what I mean? There's nothing but failure in his future. It's the advice that we wanted to give to Dale Murphy. You were a great player. If you didn't play those last 4 years where you sucked, you'd be in the Hall of Fame. Right now, Theo Epstein is he was like the best player in baseball for 4 consecutive years, and he was good for 10. But he hung on at the end, and his batting average dropped from like 288 lifetime to 260 something. And now people look at him and go, 260 hitter, that's just all right. But he literally won back-to-back MVPs as the first year as a catcher outfielder. He was a catcher center fielder, much like Dalton Varsho is this year. He was really good.
That's one thing about the Hall of Fame that bothers me. Like, I look at the NFL Hall of Fame, and there's some guys that are on the outskirts looking in, like a London Fletcher, for example. I feel like should be in. It's not. But for the most part, they do a really good job of representing the players of the era that were, a big part of the game. And I feel like MLB has done a horrible job, and it's going to become a house of exclusion at this point, as opposed to a house of that place is a museum. We're going there to tell a history of baseball. That way, in 50 years from now, 100 years from now, people will be able to look back and go, who was the best generation of players, and look at these players and look at them and go, okay, these guys were great.
They have those decades committees to go back, the old timer committees to go back and go, who really needs to be part of this conversation, who's not?
God, so many players. Jim Edmonds. Jim Edmonds is my number one case of players that I feel should be in the Hall of Fame that are not. He was amazing. He's one of, in my opinion, probably top 5 defensive center fielders of all time. He was so amazing to watch play defense.
There are a lot of guys that I think that deserve. I mean, the big problem is that once you start excluding literally 3 of the best home run hitters of all time in McGwire, Sosa, and Bonds, you kind of make the Hall of Fame confusing. When you exclude one of the top 10 pitchers of all time in Roger Clemens, it makes the idea of what a Hall of Fame is very confusing. And there's a lot of players that are right at that cusp that I think deserve it to be in it. I constantly think of the guys like, to me, it's like, who are the guys that just killed every, like like Will Clark was a great first baseman. I didn't count him in that
He
great
should be in.
in that Mark. I didn't count him in that Mark Grace, Keith Anderson thing because he is in that conversation, but he's better than them. Steve Garvey should be in there. The pitchers going on, like there were people that were just dominant pitchers like David Cohn and Brett Saberhagen and Oral Hershiser, who are just not even thought of for this thing.
Santana. The guy didn't even get 5%. I mean, he won 2 Cy Youngs and arguably should have had a third one and got robbed because Bartolo Colon had 20 wins. It's ridiculous.
And then you have the other thing. The other big mistake Hall of Fame did was, and I know people love Mariano Rivera, but making a relief pitcher the first guy to have the perfect ballot makes the thing kind of squeamish joke because a relief pitcher, there used to be an argument whether relief pitchers even deserve to be thought of in the Hall of Fame. And I'm not saying that Rivera doesn't be in the Hall of Fame, but literally there is probably 200 members of Hall of Fame that deserve to be 100% over Mariano Rivera. Because Mariano Rivera has played less innings than Pete Alonso. That's how little he played. You know what I mean? It's like most people get to 1,000 innings in a year. People get to his amount, and now he was fantastic, and he was one of those guys that was up and above the thing, like Raleigh Fingers was, like Bruce Sutter was in his prime. He was one of those guys that stayed on a bit long, and like Goose Gossage was actually basically his whole career. He was just a bit of a jerk. And like those are the guys that got in the Hall of Fame. And then you make exceptions for Trevor Hoffman. He's above and beyond. Rivera is above and beyond. The guy that, with those guys in the Hall of Fame, the guy that I always think of, like my first name for Hall of Fame is the most dominant reliever in the 70s was Dan Quisenberry. And he's not in the Hall of Fame because he threw 83 miles an hour underhanded. So he was a side armor. You know what I mean? Yeah. But he was the reason why the Royals were a good team and they won the World Series in 1980. And he closed all those games and he was always good. And he's not in the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame has gotten now. Yeah, the pro football is like because they do it. Like I don't know how they do it. They have like a committee that gets together and decides it, right? And the committee changes as needed. If somebody doesn't want to be on it, there are people that are knowledgeable about football. The fact that it's a voting thing and these writers think that they're so cool and they do these stupid ass stuff, like you see the guys, I only voted for 4 players. It's like literally there's
voted for nobody on their first ballot that this guy did this year.
Yeah, it's like it's because so those are the 3 problems. The problem number 1 is the steroids guys are hard to judge. Problem number 2 is that all of a sudden relief pitchers became the easiest thing in the world to get in on. And then the number 3 is that the writers probably that should be taken away. Somebody should have like an alternate Hall of Fame and that we can go to and not go to that one because it is weird. It's the selection thing is stunted. Like those people don't think that they're gonna they're horrible.
Dude, this year I think we're in danger of seeing nobody get elected. If you follow Ryan Tiberow at Mr. Tibbs on Twitter,
normally I wouldn't. I mean, most of my life, there were years where no one got in. But this year, there's so many people that deserve to get in on that ballot. That
Curt Schilling deserves to get in. As much as I fucking hate him personally, his career was amazing. I loved watching him as a player. I think he's a douchebag as a person, but he deserves to be in on his playing merits.
I agree with you that his playing merits, and because he actually sort of not only was a great regular season player, but because he was one of those guys that really stepped it up in the playoffs.
Yes,
that matters. That I don't think if Kershaw goes through his life being a bad playoff player, which he's gotten better at it substantially, he still will make the Hall of Fame based on his regular season merits. But Schilling was a gamer.
He was so good, man. He was so great. I remember when he first came to the Red Sox. I was living in Northern Virginia area, and I went and saw his first ever start against Baltimore. He was freaking dominant, dude. Just his mound presence made that team. You could instantly tell that was right before they won their World Series.
The reason why this is important to the show is because why aren't they? Isn't normally the Hall of Fame right around now? Like
they're about to announce it. They're about to announce it soon, dude. That's why I was making a point to talk about it because it's irritating to me that I hate it when we don't have anyone go in. It's an irritation to me.
There have been years where I didn't mind it, but yeah, it's kind of I like that the pro football thing does where they put 5 guys in no matter what.
Finalists. I think I love it. Honestly, man, I think I love what the NFL is doing with their Hall of Fame compared to what MLB does.
Well,
And for a long time, I couldn't say that.
The problem with the NFL Hall of Fame is that it's it's a long story. I played in high school and college, and I was a offensive lineman, and the Hall of Fame skews toward quarterbacks and running backs, and it's hard to judge what a great I when I was playing. I used to love I used to love the Bills linemen, Joe Delmier and Conrad Dobler, and those guys would not even make the All-Star game. And I think Delmier actually was elected to the Hall of Fame. I'm not sure if Dobler was. It's hard to judge what makes a great guard or a great center.
Not anymore.
They don't commit too many penalties. No, it's the guys that get in there, the guys that the people always liked. It's not the best guys always. It's just like somewhere somebody says that guy's a great tackle, and it sticks. And it never goes away. And I'm not saying that. I'm not actually poo-pooing those like Anthony Munoz, but I'm not convinced that Anthony Munoz was head and shoulders above a bunch of the other tackles around at the same time.
Sure.
Because it's hard to tell what makes a guy they're better than before. Is this in 2020 Hall of Fame ballot? Is that in?
I don't think they made the announcement yet.
That's 2021. I just went to Baseball Reference, and they're giving me. Well, how are they giving me percentages if it hasn't been voted on yet?
I told you there's a Hall of Fame tracker. This guy named Ryan Tibero does, and he tracks the fucking all of the announced public votes that are made public. He tracks them on a spreadsheet, and normally,
if you're tracking 70%, I don't know how that is because they haven't been voted on yet. Roger Clemens is 61.
He's tracking under. He's tracking under.
Billy Wagner at 31. Bobby Abreu at 5.5%. That guy was a pretty good player.
I think Bobby Abreu is a Hall of Famer. If you look at Bobby Abreu, I think he's a Hall of Famer. I really do.
I think everybody on this list from Andy Pettit, maybe not, but everybody that got some votes.
Pettit is not. Rollins is a Hall of Famer for me. Abreu is a Hall of Famer for me.
Andrew Jones, Jeff
Todd Helton,
Manny Ramirez, Ted
I
Helton,
love Andrew Jones,
Billy Wagner, Scott Rowland, maybe not Omar Vizquel. How do you get 52% of the vote just by?
You know what? Omar Vizquel is the biggest bum that's ever going to get in the Hall of Fame. I do not. He's just a guy that just hung around for frickin' ever and accumulated stats. And everyone thinks he's this great defensive player, but I don't think he was that great.
He was in his prime, but now there are a lot of. The funny thing is, what was a great defensive player in the 70s would be an average defensive player now because people are just so much more athletic. I've watched some of these old games. The game that always comes on is a Cub fan. They always show that 26-24 game where they played the Phillies, and Mike Schmidt was considered a great fielder of his time. If you look at him now, he looks like lumbering and not fluid compared to, Manny Machado or Nolan Arenado or the guys you see nowadays. It's Greg Nettles was considered a great fielder. Even Brooks Robinson doesn't look as smooth as Manny Machado. It's just one of those things. But yeah, this is pretty crazy. And the reason is because they can't make up their mind on Clemens and Bonds. Because those guys are eating up votes. If you just said they can't be on it, then those votes might go somewhere else.
Yeah, it's a shit show.
Yeah, this is we need to undo this somehow. Have a different one. Because that is most of the guys that they're not voting for, I can't really make a big argument for Torrey Hunter or Mark Burley. Tim Hudson, those are very good players.
Torrey Hunter's borderline for me because he was so great defensively, and his bats. I want to say he's got 380 homers or something crazy like that. He's very borderline, but he's such a great player of that generation, in my opinion.
Well, I think he is like the Twins version of of Mark Grace. He's a local favorite who's good enough to be that. Like, he deserves to be in the Minnesota Twins Hall of Fame. I just don't know about the Hall of Fame, especially if you're in a Hall of Fame that Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds can't get into. You know, there's a huge drop off. Yeah, but that is, I didn't even think of talk about this, but that is something. Nobody's in the Hall of Fame, and that is same. Like, I thought this year would be the year that we'd get like 6 guys in, because there's less,
crazy.
Because the guys below Abreu, I just wouldn't. I mean, like, it looks like they got no votes. So you have 14 people that got votes. If everybody voted 10 players, then just by,
and that's the thing, a lot of people didn't. So many people voted 4 players, 6 players, bullshit like that.
Yeah, just by the law of averages, you would have gotten 3 guys in. You know. Yeah, yeah. Those guys are. You. I've never been mad at these guys before, and now you've made me mad. These guys are jerks. It's not just the other thing. It is like, how can Jeff Kent not make the Hall of Fame? You know, once you have
Jeff Kent needs to be in the Hall of Fame. See, he's the greatest second baseman offensively ever.
Was he better than Morgan?
Yeah.
Was he better than?
I mean, if you look at his home runs alone, he's number 1.
He was the most powerful second baseman ever. But I believe that he deserves it. But I would still put him behind Morgan and Sandberg.
He won an MVP. I just don't understand the hate.
I don't
get it.
I don't hate him. I mean, like, I'm saying he's third. I mean, there's guys I can't really reasonably judge, like, because I didn't see Nap Lawap play. Maybe he was great. You know, I never saw him. Tony Lazzari of the Yankees.
But I just got to tell you, have you been to the Hall of Fame before?
You know, I have not been to the Baseball Hall of Fame. I went to the Football Hall of Fame.
And there's a million plaques of a million fucking guys from the 1900s that I have never heard of. So many. And that's where I'm just like, okay, wait a minute. Our generation is grossly underrepresented. It's almost a travesty.
It takes that, because if you're playing now, you can't get voted on, and in 5 years you have to be out for 5 years. So, you know, I don't know how old you are, but I'm assuming you're in their 40s.
I'm 42.
And it's like there are the guys that you grew up with are just now being, you know, maybe 2-3 years ago they just started being on the ballot. The guys that had the full careers with you. You came in at the end when Reggie Jackson was ending his career, and
I mean, I've seen most of these. Like, I remember seeing a little bit of Tim Raines' career. You know, a guy who got in recently.
But your guys are just really coming up now.
The guys like I saw Scott Rowland's entire career. You know what I mean? I saw Todd Helton's entire career. I've seen a lot of these guys play from the time they came up.
It's like, I believe third base has if you don't count relief pitcher's position, third base has the fewest number of Hall of Famers.
I saw exactly, and he really. I saw Barry Bonds' entire career. You know what I mean? I saw Roger Clemens' entire career. I started watching baseball when I was like, I don't know, 8, like really kind of following and getting baseball cards, shit like that. So man, I saw a lot of these guys' entire careers.
Yeah,
and now we're getting to the newer generation of guys where I'm just like, every guy that's in the ballot, I've seen every bit of their career. Andy Pettit, you know, all these guys, Torrey Hunter, the guys we're talking about, Bobby Abreu. You know, the majority of them, I've had them in fantasy for years and years and years, so I know a lot about their numbers and, you know, who they were as players, because you study those numbers so intensely, or you're so attached to them winning leagues, etc.
I have a great Andy Pettit story.
Yeah.
Like, I never met him, right? But when I was like 20, I used to work with Disney on these outside things. Like I would do like roadie work and stuff. And I got to be at the MLB PA Awards. I got to be a seat filler with the woman who was my wife. So when people went up, I would go fill their seats, and they were sitting at these tables. And so the people got up to get an award, and we were sitting at the table that was supposed to have me, my wife, filling in for 2 people, and the 2 other people at the table were supposed to be Andy Pettit and his wife. But it wasn't Andy Pettit and his wife. It was Andy Pettit's mom and dad. Right? And so we really hit it off. And Andy Pettit had bought them a house in Celebration, which is this kind of planned community. And so, like, we went to dinner like 3 times at Andy Pettit's mom's place.
That's awesome.
We never met Andy Pettit, because he wasn't coming to Florida during the time that we were over there. But it was like we would get a call like, Like, I don't know what happened, but we bought a bigger turkey than we were planning. So you want to come over and have dinner? It's like, sure. What the hell? Let's go to this
That's
mansion
awesome.
your kid bought you. But it was like, but I did that's so I always think of Eddie Pettit warmly because his parents were so nice, and they had that they were real Southern, like Louisiana Southern. They had that weird accent, and but they were always willing to take us to dinner. So for
That's
a while
hilarious.
we were good friends with these. I was like 26, 27. And my wife was like 25, 26. We were really good friends with like these 70-year-old, 60-year-old Andy Pettit's parents. But
That's
anyway,
comedy.
so
Pure
but
comedy.
I don't think Pettit deserves the Hall of Fame because I think he's borderline as a pitcher considering there's all those other
He's
pitchers
not.
out there.
I don't think. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. It's
And
weird. I'm really on a lot of guys, but there's other guys where I'm like, nope, I don't think that they deserve it. And if you look at Pettit's body of work, Pettit gets a lot of credit for being really good in the postseason. That carries
there's
a
something
lot of
for
weight.
that. There's something
He
for
pitched
that.
a lot. And those Yankees, I mean, he was part of those core Yankees teams that won the 4 World Series in the late 90s, early 2000s. You can take a lot of that, but if you take that into
That's where
consideration, then nobody can keep Kurt Schilling out of the Hall of Fame because he won multiple World Series. He won that one with Arizona where him and Randy Johnson basically carried Diamondbacks to a World Series, and then he won multiple with the Red Sox.
that was the thing with like when you have a group and you only have to put a few people in. Like my football love probably ended around 1990, but I was a Bears fan, and we have the great '85 team, and they had to put in some guys. I never really understood how they put Jimbo Covert in over Jay Hilgenberg. I just don't get it. Hilgenberg was the best lineman on that team every year that he was there. It's like somehow you just made this choice that guy was the guy to get in the Hall of Fame. At the same time, there are other guys on the team. I thought, how did you pick that guy? How did you not pick Gary Fensick? I don't know. Anyway, like I know who's good on this team. I watch it every week, and I was a lineman, so I know what linemen do. And not that Covert wasn't good. He was a very good lineman. Just Hilgenberg was one of the best centers ever to play the game. Anyway.
All right. Well, look, I'm ready to about wrap up for today. I got to go back to work and get some things done, but I can definitely make this time next week.
Before we go, I was going to say we should start with some plan to do real breakdowns, and I was thinking we'd start with either first base, third base, or second base, shortstop. And my thinking was that, like, you take the lead on one side, I take the lead on the other side. Like if you choose shortstop, I take second base. So I was going to ask you that question: what do you want to do, first base, third base, and which side would you do?
I'll take first base.
Okay, so we'll do first base, third base, and I'll do third base. And the idea would be basically that you compose your rankings, and then I ask you questions. I beat you up a little bit about it, and then same way around. Devil's advocate, not jerk.
How high you want to do? Top 25?
I would say that you can probably stop earlier than that, but if there's guys that like you should keep an eye on, you can have like this.
I mean, think about it like this: we're minimum drafting in a 15-team league. You're minimum drafting 15 first bases. You know what I mean? And then if you're counting your first base, third base, I think maybe we should go 20.
20. That's why I would normally say like that. I would say like assume that maybe 5 of the middle infielders are going to be first basemen. But at the same time,
there's multiple position eligibility like DJ LeMahieu, etc.
Yeah, and I think like and be smart about that. Like there's no reason in the world someone would start Buster Posey at first base when he could start him at catcher.
But, honestly, I would never play LeMahieu at first if I could put him at second, which you can. So
I actually think that second base is deeper than first, and I think it's helpful to have him at first base because there's just not that many first basemen that there aren't that many difference makers at first base, but at second base there's a lot of guys that I kind of like. So when we do second base, shortstop, I get first pick.
Sounds great.
And with that, we'll say good night. We'll see you at 10 o'clock, 7 o'clock your time. Next
Sounds
Monday.
Great. We'll see you there.
I'll figure this out. Bye, y'all.
Fun times. Peace.